Great, lovely. So, welcome to Wise Women Weekdays for those that are watching this. My name is Karen Dodd, and I've got a great chap that I'm going to be talking to today, having a chit chat. His name is Clive Edwards, and he's set up something called the capillary wave. So, hello, how are you?
Hi, Karen. Nice to have a chat with you. Thanks for inviting me on. And
Absolute
yeah, it was
pleasure.
lovely to meet you recently down
It
at a London
was.
event. Yeah.
And we sneaked out. Well, you sneaked out and had a lunch somewhere else, and I followed. We had the same idea because of the queues, and just yeah. And then yeah, that was nice to get to know you. So, tell me first, why the capillary wave? Why have you called it that? What's that all about?
Well, do you know what? Because I talk about law and governance, and I didn't want it to sound too much um like a common law type thing, or I didn't want to just. I just think it's quite neutral sounding thing, and it's it's it carries quite a significance as well, doesn't it? Like that little drop
Yeah.
of information, it just reverberates out and disturbs the current system that's already out there. So
Disturbs the car. I like that. I like that
yeah,
capillary wave. Yeah, it makes people think, doesn't it? It really
yes,
which is kind of, and just before I pressed the record button, I said this is why I like to be on YouTube, because when I get my videos deleted, removed, and get I sit put on the naughty step and stuff. I can't have my pudding. People say, well, put it on, BitTube and Rumble and somewhere else. But I said, but it's actually all about getting this information and dropping seeds or sowing seeds for somebody to come and water. That's the main thing, isn't it? So I think that's what we're doing here. We're giving information to people so they can go and do some work.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I couldn't agree more.
So I've got some questions here. You've already answered the first one. Right. So you've caused a wave, haven't you,
Have I?
already? Yeah.
I might well have done. Well, I hope that
It's a
given
tsunami.
given that
Actually,
I'm
it's not.
called the capillary wave, I'm hoping that that's what's happened. But
I
you
think
might have to tell me.
tsunami. I think you're going to be the tsunami man, actually. Well, but you've ridden that wave. You see, I'm sure there's more to come. But you have caused a bit of a stir, and I think you've landed. It sounds like you've not fallen off. Well, you've been knocked off the surfboard. I've just got this vision of you surfing these waves at the moment, getting knocked off, but you've got back on, and you're on dry land now. You've achieved quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah. My story is the whole reason I got involved in law and governance is because the local council brought a problem to me at the same time actually as HMRC did.
Oh dear.
So I was dropped in that, to carry on our analogy of water, I was dropped in the ocean and nobody knew if I could swim, not even me. And I just knew enough to just do a little bit of doggy paddle to keep my neck above the water. And I treaded water for a little while and I started looking at policies and legislation and all kinds of things just to try and get a grip of this battle that was going ahead
Yeah.
around me. And that's what I did. And then I started to become quite a good swimmer. And then I became such a good swimmer that nobody tried to drown me anymore from
Which is
government.
brilliant. Did you
Yes.
get any of those float things? Those round things, whatever they're called. That
Yeah,
the
those little lifesaver things.
life, yeah. Like, did anybody chuck you any of those, or were you doggy paddling totally on your
Well,
own here?
do you know what? I'd like nobody does anything solely on their own, do they? In all honesty, because at the start, I looked at people like Robert Menard, Dean Clifford. I'm talking like many years, 15 years ago, and so bits of their information. That was a common law kind of. They were had a common law approach back then, and that resonated with me. I thought at least it gave me a way of thinking that we can survive outside of the legal system. Although I've come to learn that common law is not the answer. It's not the correct. You're not. You can't. You wouldn't be able to do what I've done by claiming common law
No.
because,
It's a foot in the door, isn't it? But I think
yeah,
that's where we've gone wrong with these last 5 years, where a lot of people have jumped on the ship. Let's go back to the water here. They've literally jumped on the ship and maritime law and everything like that, thinking I'm not paying this, I'm not paying that, and they've got themselves in a lot of trouble because I think they've
yeah,
been following people that actually don't have the whole story, and I think that's been really dangerous. And I know personally a few people that have invested also a lot of money. They've handed a lot of money over and lost it because they didn't want to pay their mortgage, they didn't want to pay their council, and yeah, they got burnt fingers. Because I think a lot of people haven't done what you've done, which we'll go into in a second if we may, and they just like put their foot in the water. But common law is not the answer to everything, is it? Maybe we need to, follow it in a certain aspect, but that's not the answer to get out of this mess that we're in at the moment.
No, and I think you touched on some really important things there. Like number one is like there's a lot of people out there giving advice on the law. They're commonly easily found on the internet, but how many of them have done anything? How many of them have got wet? How many of them have got up to their neck in these legal arguments and been in the courtrooms and have walked the path that they talk about? Now, I don't know. I can't answer that. But if I was giving some of your listeners some advice, I would certainly say, whoever you might be taking advice from, it would be very wise to see if the guy or girl that you're listening to has done some of the things that they talk about. Because as you say, you can get in trouble really quick for things like council tax. Um, because the councils can make you bankrupt for a few £100 and then put a charge on your house, and then you're in all
Yeah.
kinds of trouble. So just tread carefully is what I would say to anyone. I'm not saying there's a lot of possibilities once you understand how the system works, but make sure that's what I try to give through my website is an understanding. I like to remove myself from the equation. It's not about Clive Edwards. It's about what I try to do is deliver information that can help anyone. That's the approach I kind of take to it.
No, absolutely. And again, wise words there, I think. And I think we all have to do the work ourselves. We have to look into it. We have to understand it. Well, I've met people, with a fair bit of money, but they're not happy with the way the system's run because they know it's corrupt. And they've said, look, I'm just going to pay you to do it to somebody else. And I think, well, that's not the answer either.
That
Because
ain't
we're
gonna
talking
work.
about sovereignty, and I've still got my sovereign on, but we're talking about sovereignty, and to be sovereign, you've really got to understand this yourself. Because if you are up against it, you've got to have the answers. You can't phone a friend here, can you? Or
No.
ask the audience.
That's a really good point because you can't. You're right. I know people. I've had people offer to pay me money to get them out of trouble, or to. You can't give someone an understanding. You can't give them knowledge. Knowledge, by definition, means it's lived experience.
Yeah.
That's what not to know something means. You've experienced it. You've lived through it. So you can't give that away.
No,
You
no,
can't.
it's yeah. And I think also being in this incarnation as you're, as Clive, as me, as Karen, and as whoever is, looking at watching this video, as that individual, it is kind of their, I don't like to say the word journey, but it is a journey. It's their path to find this out. That is part of being human at the moment, to see what's going on and which path you want to take. Do you want to
Uh,
jump ship? Do you want to be a good surfer, or do you want to just follow the masses?
Absolutely. And I liken judges to like our maths teacher at school. So if your maths teacher will know whether Karen was competent at maths or she struggles a little bit, or these long divisions, Karen always struggles with that. So if Karen turns up to me one day in class after giving her long division homework and Karen's got all of the answers absolutely spot on, as your teacher, I'm going to question Karen. Come on, I know you. Who have you copied? That's
Mm.
what your teacher's going to say, and your teacher's going to say, "Show me the."
That's what he did say, actually, Clive. Wasn't
And
my
he's going to
forte,
say,
maths. Yeah.
Karen, show me you're working out. And that's what a judge does. So people
Yeah.
often come to me and want the answers. And I say, well, if I gave you the answer and it was 87B, and you think, oh, brilliant, Clive's giving me the answer. I've just got to go to court now, and the answer is 87B. So when the judge asks me this magic answer, 87B, I'm sorted. So then
Yeah.
the judge says to you, what makes you think you're above the law? Why do you think the law doesn't apply to you? And you say, 87B. And he has to do is ask you, well, how did you arrive at that? And then you're
Abs-
stumped.
You're stumped, and a lot of people have been stumped. It's like that saying, isn't it? You can teach a man to fish rather than give him the fish. People have to learn this. So let's go back a little bit to your past. You say you've been on this search a long time. And in my mind, I think you're successful. I don't think it's all over, because although you're saying that they leave you alone now, what made you, when and what made you get onto this? You're saying you had two, HMRC and the council upset you. Normally it comes in threes. There wasn't a third one. No,
Yeah. No, well, you say what made you, and to be fair, I didn't choose this fight. I didn't choose any of this. I
no.
was quite happy running my business and managing a football team and playing football. That was my life. I was well happy. I was absolutely, you know, getting on just fine. And then the council and HMRC converged around 2007, around the Great Recession. I was in the construction industry, and then my life changed. My life got turned upside down. I thought it was the end of the road for me, to be quite honest. And it was a catastrophic event, as I believed at the time. And so I was thrown into it. I didn't choose this path, but ultimately I was put in a very tight corner, and then it was sink or swim. It really was. I mean, it was the end of the road for me. So I didn't, as I see it, I didn't really have a choice. I had to start looking at the law. I had to start looking at council's policy. And the burning question for me was, where on earth did the council get their authority from? Like, I've never met this guy before, this enforcement officer, and now he turns up and tells me my life's over. Like, how did that happen? So
Yeah,
that's what spurred me. And as you say, so that lit a fire in me. This never gone out. It's only grown. And unless, like you said, you can't buy this, it can't
no.
be bought unless that fire is lit in your soul, in your heart, and you've got a yearning desire. As I did, I was like, right, I need to understand everything. This has got to change, and that's what happened.
Were you ever tempted? Because that takes a lot of courage, and quite often I say we need men with big cojones and women with some big balls here to to take it forward, to have that courage to do it. Was there not a time that you thought, oh, I'm overwhelmed, this is too much, I'm going to jump off the cliff or whatever? I mean, what kept you? What Because quite often there is this spark in us. There's something that pushes us, like I would call it a divine, I don't know, force that makes us do whatever it is that we're doing on this path less traveled.
Yeah, well, I certainly see it as a divine intervention in my life. I think if you're in a coma, sometimes it's an outside force that can bring you round. I didn't wake myself up. I got woken up. That's how I
Yeah,
see it. And so, and it set my life on a completely 180 trajectory. Like, my wife will be the first to tell you that I'm a completely different guy. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And for the better as well, I might add. So, um, yeah, like as you say, so I didn't see it as courageous because I was already at the end of the road. So it's like, do you just want to lie down and give up and die, or are you going to pick up the gauntlet and walk forward? So I decided I've got no choice but to walk forward. So I didn't see it as courage as such. Perhaps the second, some of my other fights I've had required a bit of courage, but certainly at the start it was a case of sink or swim. So it was just
Right,
get it,
so survival.
yeah.
So where did you start? You've got these people metaphorically knocking on your door, or maybe physically knocking on your door. What did you do? Because you can say go away, there's no wet signatures, there's no stamp, all this stuff that we've been told. What did you do at the beginning?
Well, so I I they came to me, as you said, and told me I couldn't do this, and they tried to shut my construction business down effectively without going into the nitty gritty about it. That's what the end result was. And so I thought, crikey, they were trying to apply pressure on me to comply, and I wouldn't comply. I was smiling at them, but still not complying. So I just, as I said, I went away and I started to look at their policies on enforcement. Then eventually, I'm talking, this probably took a period of a year, 2 years when I was learning bits and bobs and then I come across someone called Robert Menard on the internet when I was looking at contract law, and he explained about this person, and that lit a light bulb off in my mind. And then I realized, I kind of realized a little bit later on that the Bible was, because the Bible talks about persons, and I couldn't believe it. I thought this book, the Bible, was about some hairy dude with a beard 2,000 years ago walking around healing people, and I couldn't. It blew my mind that that book mentions persons, and I knew full well that the council had jurisdictions over persons, and they were trying to put me in a pigeonhole as one of their persons. So that was the catalyst for me to start looking at the Bible a bit as well, and seeing how the Bible interacted with law and governance, which is a key factor. It's huge.
Mm. Well, I watched your presentation when I met you in the flesh last weekend, was it, in London? And the clarity, you made it so clear, because you were saying what they have done is basically copied these
Yeah.
laws, and they've just changed the names. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because the Bible seems to be popping up quite a lot in conversations that I'm having with every aspect of life, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I as I say, I had no idea how important the Bible was. I just thought it was stories about some, like I say, some guy 2,000 years ago. But I didn't know it would become pivotal in my life, which it has. So again, so I started looking at where the council gained their authority from, and then I started, I'm trying to piece together. It's so many years ago now. I can't know the exact chronological events of it, but I would notice, say, the king at the king's coronation, is the Bible was invoked, and they're swearing oaths, and an oath is invokes something higher than mankind. And I thought, well, the Bible's involved in law and governance, and so I started like looking at bits of it and searching for words in the Bible, like this word person, and I found it in the Bible, and that was a real moment for me. Job 32:21 to 22. It says, "Don't accept man's person or man's titles," and yet what the council doing? They're trying to give me this thing called a person. A planning contravention notice I had at the time was referring to me as a person about 20 times. And then they give me this title of Mr. Edwards. Well, I'm just an ordinary guy. No one calls me Mr. Edwards unless I'm in, serious trouble. So, and I thought, well, my parents didn't call me Mr. Edwards. What's this title about? What does Mr. mean? It's not on the birth certificate, Mr. Edwards. So where did this name come from? Just all these really simple. I mean, like I say, I knew nothing about it, and these were just naive, simple questions. But actually, they they proved essential. It's a good place to
Yeah.
start. Yeah.
So did you, how many times have you been to court?
Well, I had to go for other people. So what I did when I started understanding law and governance fairly well, I went onto a forum, a planning forum, where farmers and professionals like solicitors and planning agents and things might all sort of write on this forum. And I went there on this forum as a new member and explained that you don't need planning permission. And I gave a detailed kind of response as to why. Of course, everyone piled on me saying, "What do you're talking rubbish and whatever." And these planning agents and solicitors and all these people would be firing all these questions at me. And I answered them all and put them in their place fairly competently. Of course, this got the eye of the farmers and smallholders that were there and who were having planning difficulties. So they would message me privately saying, "I'm in court on Wednesday. Do you think you could come and help?" So I would say, "Yeah." So I used to go and help these people, and then that just led me on a journey. So I had to help them in their court cases because the council refused to take me to court. Now I wrote letters to my council asking them to take me to court, like not early on, obviously, because I was petrified. But as my knowledge grew, I would write them a letter and say, "Listen, I'm going to build a house on this field. Have you got any objections?" They never write back to me. And I would say, and they'd still enforce against me or add more enforcement notices. And I'd write to them and say, "Listen, you've got your opinion on the law. I've got my opinion. Why don't we take this before a judge?" And they never did, not once. But they did get an expert in planning law over from South Wales, a chap called David. I won't go into his surname. He was a nice guy actually. And so he took on the case. They brought him in specifically for my case. And so I asked for a meeting with him, which he agreed to. And I asked him, we had a bit of a chat and I asked him some simple questions. And ultimately he agreed with my case because I said such things to him like, "Is it illegal not to have planning permission?" He said, "No, it's not illegal." And I said, "Do I have a right to a private life?" And he said, "Yeah." And some simple questions like this. So I come out of the meeting. I wrote to the council and the CEO and said, "Listen, your expert agrees with my case. So what's the problem? We're all in agreement here." There was a bit more to it than that, obviously, but because
Yeah.
by this time I was looking at the council's constitution and I realised, perhaps we'll get onto in a minute, like you touched on my talk in London there. I realised there's only two positions you can be in at law. Like Karen, who I'm looking at now, you can either be one of the electorate or one of the people. You can't be both. You're one or the other in the eyes of the law. I'm talking about now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I found this information in their constitution and I pointed out, I said, "Look, I'm not one of your electorate," because they rule over the electorate. Electorate are the commoners and they are third class citizens. And I said, "Hey, look, I'm one of the people and the people are under God in a different jurisdiction." And when I started pointing this out, that was the end of the argument.
I think that's the eureka moment there. The people are under God. The people are under God. That is key, and that's what resonated with me when you did your talk, and I think it will do with a lot of people here. But then again, you've got to know the facts because we have been manipulated, haven't we, in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah. And my talks, you can find it online at my website, capillarywave.com, or it's on my YouTube channel under Ascending Tribe. And that will explain. That's the key. If there's one takeaway for your viewers, your audience in this discussion, Karen, the one takeaway is there's only two things you can be at law, and that's one of the electorate or one of the people under God. And if people understood that fundamental point, like that would change that could change their argument and their position at law like overnight, and they could be much more successful because you cannot argue. You're not going to beat the crown as from the position of one of the electorate. That's the worst position anyone can be in at law. But
Does it, sorry, Clive, but does that mean, because I hear a lot of people say, "I want to get off the electorate," the
yeah,
voting
yeah,
thing.
the electoral
So,
role, yeah.
yeah, the electoral roll. So, is this the start for people? They have to come off that. And does that mean, okay, I'm not one of them anymore? Is it as simple as that or not quite?
It's not quite as simple as that because you're right. It goes back to that understanding. there's no point coming off the electoral roll if you don't know why you're doing it. That's what I would say to anyone. Like, understand why you're doing what you're doing. Now, if you're on the electoral roll, they get jury members from the electoral roll, and they also you can be called up for war conscription from the electoral roll. So the electoral roll is like the role. It's like the role at school, registration, but in the mornings with your tutor. It's like, Karen, yes, miss. Clive,
Yeah.
yes, miss. Well, the electoral roll is the role of all of their citizens, and the citizens have made an obligation with the state. The very fact you're on that roll means you've made a legally binding promise to serve the government. I can talk about that and I can evidence that. But so when the government say, right, we would like you to go to war now, Karen, please. There's no you promised them you would.
I've signed up for it. I've signed up. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So is it an act, like if somebody just moves house and then doesn't sign up to the new, council that you're in, is that enough to say you're not on the electoral roll, or do you have to actually go in on and write a bit of paper, send a letter saying I don't want to play anymore?
Well, this comes back to those two. So this is fundamental. This is law and governance hangs on this, what I'm about to explain now. So there's the legal system of mankind, and then there's the lawful system of God. Okay, and it and this is evidence right throughout states. So the King Charles wears one crown of office and that's the imperial crown, where he rules over his state citizens, and the other crown is the St. Edward's crown that he wears to serve God's people in that jurisdiction. And that's also happens with judges. They swear two oaths. So one oath is for their office of the United Kingdom, and another oath is under the jurisdiction of God. That's why judges have got two oaths. That goes down to police officers. So a police officer, it's his job to enforce the policy of the United Kingdom against the electorate. And as a constable, it's his job to protect the people under God. He swears an oath for that. And that goes down then to the local council. On council level, this will be in your local council's constitution, where they've got a duty to sort of explain policy and how the policy is rolled out to the electorate, but they're accountable to local people. It says so, and I've evidenced this, and you'll be aware from the talk I gave that there's council's constitutions I pointed out, and not just my local one, around the country, that the council are accountable to local people, but they explain the policies and what's happening to the council tax-paying electorate. So there's a complete division at law, depending on what side of the fence you're on. Oh, going back to that, so the main point is the word "atorn," A-T-T-O-R-N. That means to turn away from one lord and go and serve another lord, because there's only two jurisdictions. There's only legal and lawful. That's it. There's nowhere else you can go. So you're either under the king in the legal system, or you're under our Father who art in heaven in the lawful system. Now, we all start off there under our Father, but we atorned. We turned our back on that and went to be a subject of an earthly king. So,
and we didn't know it, and we didn't even know that we were doing it.
Exactly, and that breaks the very first commandment. The first commandment says, "Have no other gods before me," and that commandment is a small g God, which means earthly kings, judges, and rulers. So right off the bat, we broke the very first commandment. And so that's why there's an attorney general in office in the legal realm. He's the general in charge of all of the attorneys, and there's many. There's not many people, Karen. There is not many people left at Britain, and that's the sad fact. And that's why the government now are running amok.
Yeah. Well, because more people are coming out and coming up and doing their thing.
If there was more people, we could hold the government to account.
Yeah, exactly.
It's counterintuitive, because most citizens think, well, we need to get in the system and vote for the government to then hold them to account. That's jumping in the sewer in the lowest position you can be in, where you've pledged allegiance to serve the government.
Yeah.
You've got to step out of it to hold them account.
Yeah. It's really, when you know, it's easy. It's like a lot of things, but people are still, I think a lot more people are becoming aware, especially with this government in quotation marks, that we've got in situ at the moment, because you can vote for any of them: red, blue, alphabet people, green, orange, whatever they name themselves, but they're all puppets. They all dance to the same tune, because there's somebody above them that has this agenda, all around the world, or all across the world, depending how you see the world.
I say that I've often said that you can't solve a legal and political problem by legal and political means. You've got to step out of that and solve it lawfully in the other jurisdiction. That's what I did.
Yeah.
So the council came to me with their legal policy on planning law, And I said, I'm not in that jurisdiction. I'm one of the people. Again, I can evidence it from their own acts and statutes, their own council's constitution. This is what makes my website and what I talk about powerful. This is the difference, because it all has to be evidence. If you can't evidence what you're talking about, then you don't have an argument. You just have an opinion.
And absolutely, and I think the really good thing about this, Clive, is that you're walking your talk, and you've proved a point, because as we said at the beginning, so many people are advising, individuals to do this, to do that, not to pay the council tax, not to pay the car parking fines, or whatever it is, but they're getting into trouble because they don't know the stuff. And I think there is a lot of change going on at the moment, and people, because it's been going on like in the main arena for the last 5 years, hasn't it? Since 2020, since we all had to stay in our houses if you chose to, and things like that. People have started to wake up. And I remember
Yeah.
going on a course in 2020 at the beginning, all about the straw man, learning all about that. I had ideas about it before. I've read some books, but then somebody brought it into a course, and I organised a course. And then we were all filling in forms, sending them to the barons in Washington. I thought, oh, I don't think I did that, because I thought that doesn't seem quite right, because again, you're still in the system sending it to Washington. What's that got to do with what you're saying, God's law? So a lot of people they're trying to find the information, and when you choose not to pay certain taxes, it's not as if you're going to get a letter from the council saying, oh, all right, we'll sign you off, we know you don't want to pay. They ignore you, they send liability orders, they send bailies, or they threaten to, they keep going, and they ignore everything you say, so you've got piles of paper. So
Yeah.
that's why my hat goes off to you, because you've really done it. You've proved a point here, because now you do have land. Oh, sorry, you've got land, but you've got buildings on your land that you've chosen to build without asking anybody's permission, because it's your land.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've done substantial building work here, and it's still ongoing, because obviously it's been a 10-year
Yeah,
building program, if you like, and 5 years of that was fighting, going around the country, going into court for other farmers and different things. So I've had a few breaks in it from building work, and had to go around and learn some of this. So I've had to put my tools down and understand how the system worked. And then I knew I had to get court experience, because I thought I stand to lose everything. Like, if I lose this field and what I've built, I put every penny I've ever earned and more into what I'm doing here. Like, I'm all in.
yeah,
I've got nowhere else to go, Karen.
yeah,
Nowhere else to go.
yeah.
I go to, if they give me a fine, I can't pay it, I go to prison. And then what they'll do is they'll demolish everything. This is what they do in planning cases. They'll demolish the illegal work and then send you a bill for that demolition. And if you can't pay the bill, then they'll sell the land. So they can strip you of absolutely everything. And that's the position I put myself in willingly,
Wow.
but it was a strategic and calculated. I don't even see it as a gamble. I just followed the evidence and followed what the Bible said, and stepped out in faith, and that's what I
Do you
did.
know, I had a case, nothing like this, what you've done, but back in 10 years ago, I got a little place in the Isle of Wight, a little bungalow, really quirky, and it was sort of in the middle of these old Victorian villas, and I wanted to knock it down and build some flats, which I have done successfully, but my next door neighbour said I can't do it because it's on a private road. He owned the private road. He had this old hotel falling apart next to it, and I tried to be nice and say, I'll contribute to the road, or paint your building, or whatever, trying to be nice to not upset anybody. So he refused. I knocked down the bungalow. I borrowed a lot of money, 500,000, to do this. So it's all funded by the bank, interest and all that kind of stuff. Knocked it down, and then he blocked. He blocked the road. It's funny now, but when you're going through it, it wasn't really
Yeah.
very funny, because it went on for like 2 years. He blocked the road, so I couldn't get in, and I couldn't tell the bank, because they thought I was building, but I wasn't. I was paying the barrister. Something inside me just told me I've got to continue, because I'm right. I'm not upsetting anybody. I'm improving people's
Exactly.
lives. That the whole lot, and I just pushed forward. I just managed to, and I won.
From a
Long story
biblical
short,
point of view,
it
from a
was
biblical point of view, you're right. Like, what did you do wrong? Nothing. You weren't harming anyone.
no,
From a biblical standpoint, he's completely in the wrong. It says in the Bible, love your neighbor. Well, and
yeah,
so the Bible, that's why if people understood the Bible, it's self-policing. You wouldn't be
yeah.
in that. you wouldn't have had the aggravation you've had if people understood and followed the teachings of the Bible. But yeah,
No, and I've never read the Bible. I've never read the Bible. I've tried to, but I always, so and so got begot so and so begot so, and at the beginning
yeah,
is a lot of begots going on. I think, oh, I
yeah.
can't be doing. But as I said earlier, it's popping up a lot in conversations. And actually, this leads me to another question here. I don't know if you've got the answer, Clive. But when people go into court and they say, you put your hand on the Bible, you swear your oath on the Bible. It's always been the Bible, but if you're in another religion, you can swear on like the Quran and things like that, can't you? Well, how do you think that stands? You might, as I say, it's just an open question
I
here. Just
yeah, I can answer that question. It don't matter if you are a Muslim and a UK citizen, if you're a Sikh and a UK citizen. In fact, I know Muslim and Sikh UK citizens. It doesn't matter if whatever religion you are, if you're a UK citizen, you are under the teachings of the Bible. Fact. In law, like I'm just talking about law. So in UK law, you're allowed to believe anything you like. I could believe I'm a Jedi, which is quite famous, isn't it? People have all this Jedi stuff, whatever. Like the
yeah,
law allows you to have a belief, but it doesn't make it true. Or just you're under. If you're a UK citizen, you're being governed by the Bible. That's just how it is.
at the moment.
Yes, at the
Well,
moment.
yeah, well, at the moment, while we've still got Christianity going on, but yeah, that's that for
Well,
another
the
day, that
Bible,
conversation.
well, I can touch on that as well if you like, because the Bible says, if you look at what's happening from God's perspective, I've just said there's hardly any people. There's really not very many people left at law
Yeah,
at Britain anymore. It's mostly citizens, so they've all turned their back on God, according to God's own word. And it says in the Bible that when if you turn your back on me, I'll send strangers to rule over you.
yeah,
I could point out in the Bible, and that's exactly what's happening. That's why we've got Shabima Mahmood, or whatever her name is, in charge of it's the Lord Chancellor, and Sadiq Khan. That's why we got these Muslim guys and girls, and in places who are ruling over this predominantly Christian nation. Well, it is a Christian nation,
yeah.
so
It is a Christian nation.
and
Yeah.
it says in the Bible that that's what will happen if you because there's where are all the people to?
What do you think is going to happen to? Well, let's say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself personally in 5 years' time?
I see myself not on the internet anymore because it's all because I won't be allowed to because I won't have any digital ID, so I won't be able to log into YouTube and Facebook, which I personally don't care about anyway. So I'll be in my polytunnel growing some lettuces and potatoes, and I'll be happy as a pig in manure, let's say.
Well, yeah, might be
Because
next door. You might have the pigs next door, mightn't you?
yeah, yeah. But
If you get any
that's where
pigs.
I think
Okay.
that's where I'll be, Karen. I'll be on the homestead,
Enjoying the land.
yeah, doing
But
what I got to do
you're
here.
not going to be like off grid as such, because a lot of people say I'm going to go off grid, don't they? Which means, I guess, I don't know, living in a caravan, sort of the other in a forest somewhere where they have got no access to water and electricity and stuff like that. Because to me,
No,
that isn't the answer either. And
I
that's like
agree.
kind of, yeah, it's running
I agree.
away where there is a fight that has to be done.
Exactly. And that's another one of the big differences. What I talk about and perhaps what others talk about is I say to people, I haven't ran away and hid under a rock in the corner of a field thinking I'm free just because I'm keeping my head down and the council don't know where I am. I went and told the council what I'm doing. I wrote them a letter and said I'm going to build I'm going to build a house. If you want to write to me of any object, let me know. And so I stood my ground because I stand on the law.
Yeah,
And when you stand on the law, you haven't got to run and hide. Now, I'm not saying that's not going to bring you,
yeah,
I
aggro.
often aggro because we've been on the government-run duck farm for most of our lives. We've been walking like they're ducks and quacking like they're ducks. And all of a sudden, you're turning around to the government and saying, I'm not one of your ducks. And they're saying, well, hang on a minute. We've been feeding you and you've been on our farm for a long time. What do you mean telling us you're a swan? You know what I mean? So you're going to have a
Yeah,
chat with a duck farmer, and they got judges. But I also say, and this is also what makes me different to a lot of others, is if you get your argument right, you don't have to go to court. If you get your argument right from the start, now again, it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to. It's that maths teacher asking to see your homework. It's like, Karen, you're making a big claim here. What do you mean you're not one of our ducks? I want to see you working out. How have you got to this? Is Clive Edwards written to you? And did Clive Edwards write that letter, Karen, or did you
mm,
write it? Is
yeah,
this your understanding, your knowledge, Karen, or has someone put you up to this? And if you can explain to the judge, who's the equivalent of the maths teacher in this analogy, You don't necessarily have to have the answer exactly right. A bit like your maths teacher. They'll mark you on your workings out and your conviction. If you hold these, if you are in the right ballpark, making the right kind of noises and understand why you don't want to be on the government duck farm anymore, a judge is going to cut you some slack. In my experience.
No, I think you're right, because it's cheating. Otherwise, it's cheating, isn't it? And again, you're not being true
Yeah.
to yourself or true to God. What is God to you then? Because we've mentioned the Bible and divine intervention. What does this mean when you talk about being in God's jurisdiction?
It's a really good question. Well, God is the Father, the Almighty, Most High. Is, there's many ways of referring to it, but I learned from when I used to go to primary school, Our Father who art in heaven.
Yeah.
So that's who God is to me, my Father.
And are you like, obviously you're Christian? Do you go to church? Do
I'm
you
not a Christian. I
no?
don't like.
Ah, okay.
I dislike that word immensely. A lot of the problems I had locally when I was doing what I was doing, when I was disobeying an immoral government, a lot of the aggravation I had came from those that used to go to church. So I don't know what Christian means, but I don't think Jesus called himself a Christian. He had this thing called the way.
Okay.
So and a lot of Christians wear that crucifix with them out of ego, I think, and for different reasons. Well, how many of them are walking the walk? These Christians. How
But
many of them
say
go around referring to themselves as Mr. and Mrs. Jones, getting one of man's titles
Right, that's
and
very, very true. But it
yeah,
is because you say we're living in a Christian country, hence I brought in the word Christian.
yes,
But yeah, so this
yeah,
is where it's kind of challenge. I know there's a religion where you go to church and
yeah.
do all that, and but then
I
if you're following God,
I can address that if you like, that
yes,
the Christian
please.
aspect. So the Church of England, well, so going back, you remember I said that I said you asked me what is God to you, and I said he's my father, and that's how it works. The father makes the rules of his house, and house and family are synonymous terms.
Yeah.
So if you're under the lawful jurisdiction as God with your father, then you're under in his house, a house of God, and you're under his rule book. Okay. Now on the legal side, Prince Charles is one of his titles is Father of the Nation. And it says in the Bible, call no man on earth your father, for there is one father who's in heaven. Right? So Prince Charles's title is the father of the nation. So do you know who the mother is? Church of England. Prince Charles is the father. Church of England's the mother. That's why citizens are wards of the state. They're infants. A ward of the state is an infant. So you're either a child of God on the lawful side, or you're a ward of the state on the legal side. And that's what they do. They just mimic the lawful system and copied it. They've removed Christ and put man in place.
So if you're following this path that you're following, and I was talking to Dave Murphy the other day about this. He will call the Most High. He calls God like the Most High for whatever reason. He won't call himself a Christian either, and you're not calling yourself a Christian. So what would you call yourself if you
Really
had
good
to?
question.
Sorry.
No, that's a really good
But
question.
it's
I
to
don't call.
differentiate. I think people that might be watching this will say, well, hang on, I'm a Christian. I don't go to me as well. I said, I believe in Christ. I believe in God. And I would say, and I know there's something higher than us. Absolutely. I believe in the divine, and I don't go to church, and it's all
So
controlled, this religious stuff.
yeah, the church is a state. It's the Church of
Yeah.
England. It's not the Church of God. It's the Church of England.
And then you've got the Catholic stuff and all the
Yeah.
oof, bung
So I
that in
don't
the
call myself a
equation.
Christian, but I would say that I follow the teachings of Christ. That's what I sort of
Yeah.
generally say. But
Yeah.
yeah.
It's even more confusing, when you bring in the religion to it. They say don't talk about religion and politics, don't they? But now we need to, because it's all been, yeah,
Yeah.
twisted.
Well,
Very interesting.
it was the religious lot that got Jesus killed.
Yeah,
So, and interestingly, religion and politics is both on the legal side under the crown. That's
yeah,
religion and politics isn't over here with God. That's a
yeah.
man. That's a man's construct. And I've got an article that specifically deals with that, with Christian religion, and it's called "Dear Christian Countrymen." I highly advise anyone that's interested in this kind of topic, go and find it and go and read it. If I do say so myself, it's a pretty good article.
Great, great, great advice. Thank you for that. So I know you don't see yourself as a leader, and you don't want to be a leader, but you are leading the way, I'm afraid, because you have set an example and people will be following you. But I totally get it. In 5 years' time, or maybe next year, you want to be on your farm, enjoying the land, because that's the main thing. But you've had to fight to do that. Are you still in the fight? Does it ever go away?
Well, it says in the Bible you're to put on the armor of God. And the armor of God, there's a helmet, there's a breastplate, but there is no backplate. There's no reversing. There's no turning around. You've got to keep going forward.
Right.
So in short, like I'll never stop until the day I die. I will never ever stop doing what I'm doing and fighting the good fight. So, and yeah, you're right. I'm not the leader. Christ has already done all that. I just point everyone to Him. That's it.
So, can I just ask this, please, Clive? If somebody wants to put, I know, I will direct them to your website, which is behind you, capillarywave.com. But if somebody just says, okay, I've got a shepherd's hut and I've got a field and I've put my own water in and my own toilets and stuff like that, but now the council's saying you can't put that shepherd hut there. What would you say their very first thing is? And they are aware of all this, but they're getting grief from the local
Yeah. Well, you're
council.
going to because, as I say, like look, if you look at it from the council's perspective, how many people they've like my local council never I don't believe they've ever had anyone come forward and say I'm one of the people and use their constitution to explain why they've got to leave me alone. I don't believe that's ever happened to them before. So it's very unlikely that that's happened in this analogy. So the very first thing from the council's position is you're going to have to explain to them why you should be left alone, and that might mean going through their constitution and finding the relevant sections in there that explain to the council whether you're one of the electorate, which they rule over, or you're one of the people, which they are accountable to and are stand under God, because they've got a duty to both, just like the king has, just like the judges have, just like the police have, and so does your local council. So the very first thing is to establish with the council, like strike up a decent working relationship. Don't
Yeah.
run and hide under a rock. Tell them you're happy to deal with them, but you need to set the record straight from the outset. And yeah, and that would be my advice. And obviously, yeah, like as you said, so the absolute baseline is to understand what you're involved in, the two systems of law and governance. If you don't have that understanding, then it's very unlikely you're going to be left alone by the council.
Yeah, yeah, they'll come for you. Easy pickings, isn't it? Low lying fruit. And I
Yeah,
think, just listening to you to saying that kind of makes me feel more relaxed, because not everybody in the police force and in the hospitals and in the council are nasty people. They've just taken a job, they've left school, taken a job for life, whatever, and they're doing what they're told because they haven't thought about it. So we
I
need to,
completely agree. And I tell my members of Capillary Wave, like, talk to these people. They're our brothers, sisters, cousins. They're
yeah,
us. So, like, why be aggressive? And like, you just need to use the law. They might even be Christians, and if you start pointing out, hang on a minute, you're not allowed to do that because of this A plus B equals C, they might start scratching their head and going, oh yeah, and this is how things
mm,
change. This is how we start to turn things around by
yeah,
people using the law, understanding the law, and taking responsibility for themselves. Because I had to educate my local council. It wasn't easy, but it'll be easier for the next one behind me to do it. And we have to pick up this baton and do it ourselves and do it responsibly, do it calmly and not aggressively, and use the
yeah.
law.
Yeah. And then there might not be any cases for people to go to court and get bailies on the door because everybody's being educated. So it's a step
Exactly.
in the, yeah,
Exactly. The council don't want to take me to court, and I've asked them in writing more than once, and they refuse to. Like, because listen, the judges understand what we're talking about today. The judges understand it. They've taken an oath to both sides. So
yeah,
why would a judge want me in court? Like, the judge is not going to be happy with the council if they're going to refer me into that courtroom. There's maxims of law that says judges judge for God, and there's another one that says it's punishment enough for a judge that he's answerable to God. So why on earth, if I'm a judge, I'm going to be having a go at that council who are below me in the ranking orders of the United Kingdom? Like, don't you send me any of God's people in my courtroom, putting my soul in danger. They shouldn't be here, and that's why they don't want you in the courtroom if you get the argument right and
yeah.
understand what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Wow. You are an amazing, honestly, amazing what you've done and what you're doing, and the way you speak. You say it very clearly as well. It's not confusing. It's very straightforward, and it's from the heart, isn't it? And it's working with God, basically, being one of his kids, if he's your
Well,
dad.
it's very kind of you to say so, but and
Well,
yeah,
so
I
true.
like to think if if you can't explain this simply, then you don't understand it well enough. And I like to think, because don't get me wrong, I've had 15 years of having a go at it, so I should be able to explain it and understand it by this point in the game. So that's why I decided to come out in the public and try to help others by giving them an understanding, giving them some information that they can take and go forward in their own lives. And
So,
because
so do you run workshops and stuff like that as well, or you turn up at people's events and talk?
this year, do you know what? I started off, I didn't know where this was going to go. I just started off for, it took me about 18 months to write my website. I sat in the lounge, in my lounge, and sat down, put about 3 stone in weight on, sat down and wrote the website in 18 months with the help of my website guy, Slim, who's a top bloke. So anyway, it took me about 18 months to write that. And then I got on an offer to go and speak at various events, and various people very kindly, like yourself and Richard Vobes and others, have invited me onto their platforms for a chat. And it's gradually sort of getting the word out there, And so, yeah, it's just evolving. It's just sort of evolved naturally.
And do you want to spend more time doing this? I know you want to go on your land and have be do the job that you want to do with your family, but do you still feel like you have a role to play in
I
bringing this?
definitely do. And sorry, yeah, your point was about workshops. Well, I've got a workshop coming up on November 15th, 16th, specifically for people who want to get back to the land. And you can find you can find the web page and book tickets for that at my website, capillarwave.com. So I do occasionally do these types of things.
Brilliant.
Um,
Where
and
where
yeah,
is where is that, Clive? Where are you
it,
located?
it's in Wells in Somerset is where I'm
That's
doing this, is where I'm
right.
having
Okay.
this. It's a planning law conference. I've termed it. It's to help people who want to get back to the land, a bit like what Richard Vobes is doing, getting back to the land, and farmers and people with small holdings. It's essential information. I've been through the mill, so I know the planning system from top to toe. But to answer your question about I'm torn really, because I understand there's a place for this, for interviews like this, and putting myself out there, but I'm not really a limelight guy. I don't care about this stuff, but I feel a duty to tell people, because we're in a serious state of affairs. It's serious, isn't it? I don't have to tell you. And things are going to get much more serious. And with all
Yeah.
this digital ID rollout and everything that's going to come in behind that, and all this schools and pupils and homeschooling and across every aspect, that HMRC reaching in the bank accounts, everything. The net is getting tighter. The boot is being pushed further and harder on our necks. So that is why I knew this was coming. So that's why I came out into the public, made myself a target, and started opening my mouth and explaining law and governance. But I can see a time when I'm not going to be allowed on the internet because my views are the A, B, and C, and because I haven't got a digital ID that won't let me now access my YouTube or Facebook accounts. So it'll be forced upon me, and then I'll just be off the internet, and then I'll be back, farming,
Yeah.
looking after me chickens, I guess.
Yeah, doing what you actually really, really want to do. Yeah, we are at the 11th hour. It is, I mean, I think it is a very exciting time to be alive,
Yeah,
because of what's going on, because I do believe we come back, we reincarnate and we have another opportunity. That's just my belief system. But because it is all topsy-turvy at the moment, what do you think is going to happen? If you want to answer that question, are we going to win? Have we won?
that's a really good. We win in the end. The Bible sort of tells us how the story ends, so I already know that bit. What's important, as you said earlier, what's important is what your audience decide to do at this point in time. What side of the fence are they going to get off the fence? Because you're only going to get splinters in your backside. So get off the fence, decide what side you're going to be on, because doing nothing is going along with the status quo. If you do nothing, you're on the other team. I'm afraid doing nothing is not an option. So get off your ass, do something, and educate yourself, and take the bull by the horns. Because as you said, we need men with kahunas to stand up now,
Yeah,
but in the right way. And I mean in the right way, calmly, fairly, using the law. All right. I've achieved what I've achieved without going to London, without joining a protest. I've done it from the comfort of my lounge, and with a pen and paper. And I gained freedom that way.
fantastic.
And anyone can do it. You can do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the real takeaway from this. Understand how we're governed, get in the right jurisdictions for the right reasons, and understand why you're doing it. Don't just jump on a bandwagon. It's like, oh, Billy next door's doing it, so I got to do it. And that's the only. So going back to your question, is where do you see this going? I see a big divergence now in society. You're either going to be one of the digital ID gang, or you're not. And if you're not in the digital ID gang, you're going to be excluded from government services. That
Yeah.
includes your mobile phone contract. That probably includes your bank account and all these things. But that's coming.
Yeah,
That's what.
that is coming.
That's my belief anyway.
That's why it's so important to keep cash alive, and it really annoys me, when people know that but they still don't use cash because they don't. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there will be this separation, and we'll have more simple lives, but maybe we have to write letters or send a pigeon, and like they did in the old days, to communicate with each other. But it wasn't bad in the old days. If I remember what it was like growing up. It was a lot more less stress. But yeah, interesting times. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say to close?
Well, no, thanks for inviting me on, Karen. I've really enjoyed the chat, and yeah, I feel there's something for your audience to really get their teeth into. That's what I try and impart. Is I don't like just leaving people like high and dry. So, oh, what do I do now? Well, you can do something. It's very much actionable what I talk about, and so
And
yeah,
I
thanks for
think,
inviting me
yeah,
on.
no, absolute pleasure. I had to have you on, especially having heard you talk. And I know some people that have been following you on the website, and want to put, as I said earlier, they want to put shepherd's huts and stuff on their land, and what have you. So that seemed like synchronicity, rather than coincidence. I think they're like, to me, when something like that happens, you think, oh, okay, you're on the right path. It's like a signpost that you're doing the right thing. But no, it's been a real pleasure, and I think it's great. My hat goes off to you in a big way. Not that I'm wearing a hat, but what you're doing is phenomenal. And as you said, you can do it from the comfort of your own home, so
Yeah,
you don't have to go to court, which frightens the life out of most people, because you will be tongue tied. You don't know what 89B or whatever the question is. So yeah,
yeah,
doing it from home, yeah, or even meeting up with a whole bunch of people, which is what I did in 2020, but we didn't have enough information. It was all too new
yeah,
for us. But
yeah.
if there's groups, if there's groups of people coming together and sharing this information in a workshop environment all over the county, fine. Yeah,
And,
that's the way.
and that's something I have been thinking about, actually. Going back to your point, is I might sort of step away a bit more from certain things I've been doing, and maybe doing more events based things, like maybe 3 hours at a village hall somewhere and having discussions. I don't know. I think I like to evolve in what I'm doing, and I don't like to
Yeah.
keep doing the same thing. But these discussions are really important, so I'm grateful for having them, Karen.
Yeah, well, to get that information out, and also, you can still be doing this in the comfort of your own home because of Zoom, whilst you're still online, while, as am I, while we still got this opportunity to use the internet, you could be reaching people from all over the country to,
Yeah,
to do a regular thing. I think that's something worth bearing in mind. One other question, I know we've gone up to the hour now, and I try and keep it under an hour, but what about if somebody said, let's create an alternative sort of council to work alongside a parallel council, and where we
really
create,
good
where,
question.
yeah, because
Really,
that's
really good question.
well, it's kind of happening. It's kind of happening already, and got one foot in that camp. And somebody else who
You,
is a parish councillor said, "Oh no, I'm a parish councillor, and we've just got corrupt people, and it's all going to change." But I thought, no, we need to do something.
Well, I don't mean to cause offence. So I don't want to upset you with my answer, but it's a really, really good question, because there are, like, I believe there's shadow councils of people and this sort of stuff, and but there's only two jurisdictions. Okay, so that's why what I do is so simple when you understand the big picture. So there's only God's lawful side. All right, you're either under God or under man. So and I've attained freedom using the council, the police, the courts, and the king. It's already there for us. God set up this system, if you like. The system is perfection. A lot of people won't like me even say, like, won't like to hear that, but I believe the system's perfection, and I believe my life is sort of an example of that, because I used the system, the existing law, the existing council that's already there, and held them to their
Yeah,
rules and the rules of the Bible, and they left me alone.
yeah.
So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a lot of hard work when we could be just studying and understanding how the law system works, and then just write a letter. It's much not as simple as just write a letter and bye bye, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think it's a corruption within the system. The system does work, like the underground usually works, but things go wrong. So that's what we need to do, is address the things that have gone wrong, or maybe the people, the puppets at the top.
And also, Karen, it goes back to that point where you said about blokes. We know we need people to stand up and things,
Yeah,
because
we do.
unless there's more people sort of who didn't prepared to do what I've done, then who's going to hold the councils to account? And in fairness to them, they don't understand it now. So we need men and women, for want of a better phrase, but to stand up, hold their councils to account using the law. No pitchforks, no
No.
riots. It's not necessary. Just study their constitution, understand how the system works, and it can be done. It can be done. I'm not saying it's without its own
Yeah,
tests and
it's a challenge, and it's work, but it can be done, and it needs to
yeah,
be done. It
yeah,
really now is, as you said, it's like the 11th hour, isn't it? So
yeah,
fabulous. Okay, so capillarywave.com. That's if
yeah.
anybody wants to get in touch with you, and I'm sure they will. So if you have enjoyed this video and you want more information, please go to capillarywave.com, and you'll get all the information, and join Clive at one of his workshops to encourage him to do more. Don't want to give you more work, but you've got an amazing message to share. Because I've spoken to many people, we call them the clever clogs, that know all about common law, but you are walking the talk, and that's what is inspiring to many, because you're the proof.
Well,
But it
thank you.
takes, yeah, no, pleasure. All right, so thank you very much. I will close now, and hopefully our paths will cross again some other time.